Hello everyone, my name is Lorthorn and welcome to every Ars Nouveau artifact for Minecraft version 1.20.1. Starting out with the basics, we have a mundane belt that is made in normal crafting with leather and source gems. The main purpose of the mundane belt is to be an ingredient for later items. Just like the mundane belt, we have the dull trinket. Another item's that purpose is to be turned into different things in the future. Finally, on the list of items that are going to be turned into other items later on, we've got the Ring of Potential. Ring of Potential is 1 source gem, 8 iron nuggets. One of the things the Ring of Potential can be turned into is the Ring of Lesser Discount. Now, to achieve this properly, you require an enchanting apparatus. The enchanting apparatus has to be set up with an arcane core under it, and, well, for this process we're going to need 8 arcane pedestals as well nearby, and a jar of source. So how this crafting process works is we're going to get 1 ring of potential, we're going to get 4 diamonds, we're going to get 2 ender pearls, and we're going to get 2 source gems. Once we have all these items, we put them onto the pedestals. So we put the 2 ender pearls, 4 diamonds, and 1 source gem onto the pedestals. Then we take the ring of potential and we put it into the center of the enchanting apparatus. See that? This is what is said for the recipe. And then out of that, we'll get a new ring of lesser discount. Then we can put that ring into our bubble ring slot, and I'll make it so we do magic slightly better. Ring of lesser discount can be upgraded into a ring of greater discount, following the same process we did before, but with different items. Other things can also be crafted in this manner, like the Jar of Light. Jar of Light is redstone lamps, glass bottles, glowstone bottles, and you put into the enchanting apparatus once those are all on their pedestals, an ordinary glass bottle. And this gives you the Jar of Light. Jar of Light, you right click, it summons a light that will follow you around. When you right click again, it dismisses the light. Jar of Voiding is a magic item which is made with all this stuff here. You can look it up for yourself later on. I'm not going to be talking about the crafting as much anymore as it's pretty easy to look up. But what it does is a little bit more advanced. So Jar of Voiding voids things. How you get to void stuff is you put it onto one of these scribe tables here. You right click it onto it. Then you choose items you want to void. So you shift right click the item you want to void onto the voiding jar while it's on the table. And now that item will get voided when you have the voiding jar on. We'll also do some glowstone here. So how that voiding works is while you're holding the voiding jar, you shift, right click, and you activate it on. Then instead of picking up those items, they will instead be destroyed, and they'll give you a small amount of mana whenever they're destroyed. Warp Scroll is a way to teleport back to places you are being. How it works is you shift, right click, and it'll give you a warp scroll of that location. Then when you're out and about and traveling and you want to head back, you simply right click and it teleports you back to that location, and it'll consume the warp scroll. If you want to make a slightly more permanent destination, you can take source zone blocks, we have these smooth ones here, and we can make a portal of basically any size. Get some source nearby, put it down, and if we throw the scroll through, it'll create a permanent portal to that location. So now anytime we or any entity goes through it, it'll get teleported to that spot. Portal is only one way though. If you don't want to go through the hassle of building the portal, you can use a stabilized warp scroll. Choose a location just like the other warp scroll. Then you right click the location and it'll just create the portal for you, and it will make a 3x3 portal. And that just teleports you back just like the other one does, again a one-way portal. These portals can also be modified with the domain wand. Right click on them, you can change its appearance. A swirly purple portal or a void portal. Mundane belt, combining with all these gubbins, can be made into a belt of unstable gifts. While you wear this belt, it'll give you random bonuses at random strength. There we go. Got some absorption. Now we have some strength. Change the speed. Snifty item. Rune chalk. Alright, first complicated thing. Rune chalk is made in a normal crafting recipe. You don't actually have to go through all that enchanting nonsense with it. What you do is you put on the ground and make some runes. These runes do nothing. What you want to do next to make them do something is get some source nearby. A source jar filled with source. Then you want a spell scroll. Making a spell scroll is a simple enough process. What you do is you just get a normal blank piece of parchment. You put it on your scribe table. Then you choose a spell. This case in particular, we are going to choose a touch spell. And it has to be a touch spell to work with the runes. And it's going to be touch, harm, ignite. shift right click onto the spell scroll, and that will then choose the spell that is written there. And you take that written spell and you set it onto the rune. So now it's set onto the rune. Then whenever this rune is walked on, it'll cast that spell on the target, and I'll refresh the rune if they happen to have source nearby. But the very first time the rune is cast, it will cast without source. Source is just there to refresh it. So you can lay these as random traps out in the world without the expectation to refresh. But whatever the spell may be, it needs to have touch as its starting form for it to work. Amulet of Mana Regen just gives you +3 mana, and that's put into your necklace slot. Other option to put into a necklace slot is the Amulet of Mana Boost. Instead of giving you +3 mana regen, this gives you +50 max mana. Potion Flask. Potion Flask is a way to condense potion containment. You can only really carry 1 potion per inventory slot. So how the Potion Flask works, put it into a crafting table or inventory with a potion, and it'll store that potion in a bottle, freeing up some slots. There's a few rules to this, of course, which is it only holds up to 8, and you can't mix your potions. It has to be the same one. You can also fill it up from a potion jar if you want to. So if there's potions in the potion jar, you just right-click the potion flask onto a potion jar, and it'll fill it up that way as well. If you find drinking potions to be a rather slow process, you can get the Alchemist Crown. So how Alchemist Crown works is you can either hold it in your hand and press G, and it'll open up this reticle, and you select a potion, and you drink it instantly. Or you can equip the Alchemist Crown. Whenever you press G, you'll just select that menu, and you no longer need to have the item in your hand to use it. You can just use it anywhere. Now, if it happens to be in your inventory, but not on a slot, and you press G, it's just going to give you this menu. Annotated Codex copies your glyphs, so it gives you a recording of your glyphs, records all the glyphs you had, so if you want to transfer them to another book or share them with someone else, I guess, that's its main purpose. Yeah, it allows you to share your knowledge with other players. Next we have a very fun item, Belt of Levitation. This goes into a belt slot. How Belt of Levitation works is if you hold shift and jump, or if while you're falling you hold shift, it'll levitate you up to a certain height, as long as you're holding shift. Now it doesn't go any higher than this height here, but it's good for mountaineering, it's good for traversing, you can get some good hovers going. You can almost fly with it. I really enjoy it, actually. Alright, next is something that may be a little bit complicated, and that is the Enchanter's items, starting with the Enchanter's Bow. So, Enchanter's Bow fires arrows at the cost of mana without having any arrows at a base form. And what you do with the Enchanter's Bow, what you want to do, is you want to put it onto a scribe table. Then you want to have your spell book. You want to have a spell selected. This spell has no forms. You only want augments and effects. This one here, we have Harm and Ignite currently. I'm just going to set it to Harm, I think. We're going to create this Harm spell. Then we shift right click onto the Enchanter's Bow. And now we have Firebolt Harm. So that's the spell now stored in our bow. So now our bow will fire an arrow imbued with that harm spell. So now it fires a harming magic arrow. You can imbue it with any spell, as long as you follow the rules, that it has to be just the effects and augments. No forms allowed. You can also do this with an enchanted crossbow. It's again just one of these items you make with the enchanting apparatus. Kind of similar recipes to each other. Depends if you want a crossbow or a bow. Both sort of the same idea. Put it down on the table, choose some spell, put it on there, and now it's the spell on it. If you don't have arrows, it will provide the arrows. Even says so here. But fires the arrow that deals 0 damage. Now you do need enough power to make it all work. All that sit stuff. Enough magic, all those good things. But you don't need to just use regular arrows. You can also use these augmented arrows. Each one has its own little power. Piercing arrow will pierce armor more effectively, so it applies piercing to. Dummies don't have armor, so it's nothing we're going to really find out from that there. The amplification arrow amplifies the spell effect by 2. Now these dummies aren't really giving me the information that it's effect being amplified, so I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So It's always hard to tell precisely. Finally, the arrow that seems to give me the most results is the split arrow. And the split arrow fires 3 arrows at once, which is pretty cool. So you can spread your spell out over a large area. Now the enchanter's sword is very similar to the enchanter's bow. You put it onto the table and you create a spell for it without any forms added. So we can create harm and we can create ignite, and so it'll be a flaming damage spell that'll be cast. We'll set the spell on the sword, and now we can see the spell on the sword is touch, harm, ignite, and it is amplified by the nature of the sword. So when we hit our target here, we're dealing 8 damage and setting it on fire. Now something to note though is the harm is actually not being applied, and this is the same case with the arrows. What is happening is because there's an instance of damage being hit when the sword hits, the spell harm is cast at the same time, and therefore an invincibility frame basically appears, and so the sword is dealing the damage and the harm spell is not actually going off. If we go delay harm, amplify, ignite, and create the spell, and we apply that spell to the enchanter's sword, now when we hit with the sword, it is going to deal the 8 damage the sword would deal, then it's going to hit hard with the secondary spell, dealing that damage with amplifications, and it's going to light the target on fire and also burn it. You need to add a delay in. Otherwise, an invincibility frame will basically override your spell, making it so harm does not apply. And that is why before we did not see the amplification on the amplify arrow, is because it was just accepting the damage for the arrow shot. Also, if I'm not mistaken, this pierce arrow should go through all the targets that are hit by the arrow spell. So that's that mystery solved. Following the Enchanter's Vein again, we have the Enchanter's Mirror. Enchanter's Mirror is a self-target contained spell. So we have an Enchanter's Mirror, it's enchanted like all the others, that makes us invisible and heals us. And it also increases the duration of the final spell, so our invisibility is going to be a little bit longer. The last Enchanter's item is the Enchanter's Shield. Now you may be thinking, oh, so does this apply magic effects to you whenever you block with it? No, it's just a shield. Whenever you block with it, it gives you some nice effects. But it doesn't get enchanted like the other ones, which is a little disappointing in my mind. The Splash Flask Cannon takes an ordinary potion or flask, either or, and if you press V while hovering over it, it'll give you a reticle of potions to select. When you have the potion selected, it'll load it into the cannon, and then the cannon will fire that potion as a splash potion. If you have the flasks loaded up, then you don't even expend the glass bottles. You can just fire the flasks as explosive potions from your flask cannon. The upgrade of the flask cannon is the Lingering Flask Cannon, which turns any potion that it lobs, after selecting it by pressing V, into a lingering splash potion. Focus of Summoning makes it so your summons are slightly more powerful, and they share your spell effects. So one of the cool parts of this Focus of Summoning, and once you have it equipped in your baubles, and you cast a summon spell, such as this Summon Wolves, is if we then select this Invisible Self spell and cast on ourselves, it'll also turn our wolves invisible. So any spells that we cast on ourselves that are friendly, well, we have this will also be cast on our wolves, which is a pretty nifty and useful thing. Now, a little bit more tricky than the Summoning Amulet is the Focus of Block Shaping. So this says duplicate spells that modify or move blocks can be used to create damaging moving blocks. Right then, what on earth does that mean? Well, it's a little tricky. So let's see if I can figure it out, a good way to explain it. So some spells you can cast will move blocks, such as Pull. So we're going to create Projectile Pull. It's just going to be spell number 4. When certain requirements are met, it'll launch the block through the air. He's not going to take damage from it. There we go. Now with this augment applied, and a block that gets yeeted through will now apply damage. So that's at its most basic form. It can go further than that though. Luckily, it explains that if you actually go to the page. One of the best ways to explain it is it tells you what to do, because I was completely lost. So it gives us block targeting and entity targeting. So here's its explanations. We're going to read them, then we're going to play with them, because it's a little bit strange. A focus that modifies the effects of moving, create, or modify. Modifying blocks. Blocks that are moved with the effects like launch, gravity, pull, knockback, etc. will now deal damage to entities they hit. Damage is increased by spell damage, block hardness. Damage is increased by spell damage, block hardness, and speed of the block. Additionally, effects that target or create blocks will duplicate the rest of the spell's target, the new blocks or moving blocks. Block targeting. Modifying or creating a block will duplicate the rest of the spell onto the next block. Well, apparently I can make a useless spell if I don't have the amulet on. Interesting. Well, I don't know exactly what I did, but we'll look at it. So I have the spell made here called Projectile, Conjure Block, Break AoE. Without the amulet, it creates a mage block, and it breaks blocks behind it. With the amulet on, it breaks the mage block when it conjures it. So it duplicates the effects onto the block also placed, or that's what it appears to be. Now there's some other things, such as entity targeting. It actually tells you how to make these spells. So you can have Conjure Mage Block, Launch, Delay, Knockback all applied to a spell. So now we have Projectile, Conjure Mage Block, Launch, Delay, Knockback. So this is an entity targeting spell. If we make it touch, we can make this weird summon mage block which then gets flinged at things in a vague manner. Take that. And that again. Huzzah! We have arcane powers. And then it has further spells to play around with under spell examples, such as Throw Ice, which conjure, water, freeze, launch, delay, knockback, and a whole list of spells for you to play around, apparently with, however, this very strange and confusing focus of block shaping amulet works. So the enchantment flask can be modified to be amplified, and it can be modified to extend the time of the effects it applies. With the amplify, you'll increase the level of the potion, but it reduces their duration. So this potion of leaping, it gives us jump boost 1. If we drink this, we'll get jump boost 2. But instead, we choose to use the potion of extended time. When we combined it, it just makes it last 50% longer. So it's supposed to last for 8 minutes here, so this should last for about 12 minutes on us now. Yeah, it's about that. 3 more artifacts to go through. We've got some Source Berry Pie. You eat it, it gives you some mana regen, and it also is food. And the Source Berry Roll is much the same, granting you some magic regen when you eat it. And the final item, we're leaving for last, is my favorite item of these magic artifacts, and that's the Ring of Jumping. Ring can only really be shown off in non-creative mode, so we're going to go into survival. And what the Ring of Jumping does is it lets you double jump, or triple or quadruple jump. It lets you continually jump as long as you have mana. Effectively, we are not limited by the machinations of gravity anymore. It's not quite flying, but it's definitely falling with style, and everyone likes falling with style. So, thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you found this video useful or amusing to some extent, and we'll catch you all in the next video, where I go over every single magic spell, or maybe it'll be something else, whatever it is at the time. It'll probably be good. So, thank you once again for watching, and as always, until next time, goodbye.